Hi everyone, here is another the board match I played the other night for my club 3Cs against Worsley. This was our fourth team against their seconds, and quite a big match in the race for promotion where we've won all our games except one loss. But we had quite a weakened team tonight. We had a couple of key players missing, and I was on board one. I mean, I usually am board one, but there's usually a couple of players in between the rest of them. But this was going to be a tough match. This I graded on every board. I was actually the only board where we upgraded them because I'm 1-4-1 playing a 1-3-3 called Peter Young, who beat me in the 3Cs 3 versus Worsley 1 fixture last year. So I was out for some revenge, and let's see if I got it in this game. Anyway, I'm black like I was in the previous game. The previous game was actually the one and only time I've tried the perk, and I got rather badly beaten, so I kind of gave it up. Although I'm not entirely sure, but it might have been Sicilian transposed to, but anyway, he does these King's Indian type setups, and I like this match because it's the only match I've played this season on a digital clock. Because they have like a really nice venue and lovely digital clocks. Anyway, E4 is white, E6 and D3, which is basically a King's Indian type setup. It starts off with E4, but you get it a lot from 1 knight F3, where white's going to set up a King's Indian, but in like reverse colours. And it looks quite tame, this, but it carries a lot of punch. And it turns into a bit of a close Sicilian for a bit, with D5, knight D2, and then C5, making it Sicilian there. Knight GF3, knight C6, G3, G6, bishop G2, bishop G7, castles, knight G7, and rook B1, which is not a particular idea in this variation. More usual in this position is E takes D5, E takes D5 and C3, which is like a reverse King's Indian, you may notice, and produces equal chances, but it's quite sharp. Also blunts the bishop, that C3 move. So it's pretty good. Anyway, rook B1, castles, now B3, which I don't think is strategically sound, because I've been told in these like close Sicilian types positions, white's dark square bishop is like needed to guard the weak dark squares. So it's not a good idea to swap it off for my bishop, even though my bishop is powerful. But the main problem is that these squares have just been weakened, and now my bishop has got like its point. It's like slicing right through the A1H8 diagonal. And I could actually have capitalised on this straight away with knight B4. And this move actually forces white to sack a pawn for insufficient compensation, or to lose his dark square bishop and mine still be on the board. And it's an absolute beast. The unsigned pawn sack, which is probably best actually, is bishop B2, knight takes, and then take these off. And white's only real compensation is black's potentially slightly exposed king and black's tempo with misplaced knight, but that's about it. If something like A3, then knight A2 forces white to lose the bishop, because they thought with knight C3's friend. So, and now that bishop is just probably going to win the game for black, 'cause it's that strong, and white hasn't got a counterpart. So I could have done that, but I wasn't really thinking of moving the same piece twice in the open, and that's the problem. And I played the more natural looking move, Queen A5, which is still quite good and gives equality, but that could have gotten a big advantage already as black. He plays A4, and after bishop D7 we swap the bishops off, and now I've given white a misplaced rook. And an interesting move which I rejected was Queen C3, just filling this weak dark square and attacking the rook. And after Queen C1, knight B4 is given, and then the idea with it is to try and force white to play E5, which kind of traps black's queen, so knight B1 is threatened, winning. And now I have to move the knight back, but I've created white's pawn to E5. So D4, which clamps down on the C pawn and clamps down on the C3 square, and but also weakens the C4 square. So as Bobby Fischer said, you have to give squares to gain squares, and I want to try and put as many of my pawns on dark squares as possible to liberate this bad bishop. He plays knight h4, getting ready for a typical King's Indian break with f4, f5 and hack attack. Another option was e5 to try and make his bishop as bad as possible and liberate his own bishop. I could play queen c7 and then knight c4 holds the pawn and prepares knight d6. Although that isn't quite possible yet because knight takes e5. But that's an interesting option. So knight h4 and now queen c7 and bringing the queen back into the game. Another option was e5, but I thought I'd just be given like a white a hook to attack with by f4, even though it does liberate my bishop. So say f4 and then you take. After g takes f4, queen c3 is actually very annoying for white. Another option was knight c4, queen c7, queen e2 and knight b4 is quite good as well for black. Queen c7 and now he plays f4, planning f5 and trying to hack me up. And now I went f5 straight away, a typical blockading move, although it does carry some risk because white can take an f5 liberating his bishop. And it's weird that against the King's Indian as white I think playing f4 is really bad in positions where black goes f5. But as black I actually quite like it. Another option was f6. And then f5, e takes f5, e takes f5, g5 wins a pawn for black because the knight has to move and then you take an f5. So f5 is unplayable and f6 keeps things more solid, so maybe that was better. But f5, rook b1, I'm trying to bring the rook back into the game. And now I try and break through on queenside with a6 and b5. Because I don't want to get crushed on the king's side, so I have to get some queenside counterplay to make up for it. He plays queen e2. He's connecting his rooks and finishing development. And now I missed an opportunity where I didn't really look at f takes c4 captures because I thought f takes c4, knight takes c4 looks too risky. But knight d5 actually is very strong because knight's coming into e3 with decisive effect. So this is actually quite strong and gives an advantage to black, but I didn't play it. I chickened out. Instead continued my safe plan of b5 and the queenside attack. He brings his rook back to a1, and I was going to try and pressurise my queen side rather than king side by trying to liberate this bishop on the diagonal, because now after I've played b5 the problem is there's like a nasty pin in my rook potentially. And also to try and rip open the A and B files for his heavy pieces to maybe infiltrate. Another option was to bring the knight back into the game and after rook a... Whoops, that was a bit stupid. Rook a8, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook a1, bishop c8. There's about equal chances. So rook a1 and now I play rook fb8, which is a dodgy move. I should have removed the rook from the pin and gone rook ab8. And after a takes b5, a takes b5. I rejected this because it seems to give white an open a file for nothing, but it can easily be challenged. So this is nothing. So rook fb8, rook fe1, and now b takes a4, a very strategically dubious move. And to be honest, this was a bit of hope chess, because I knew that if he plays rook takes a4, I've got a backward pawn on this, or an isolated backward, it's quite a backward pawn on a half open file, so it's easy to attack. And he didn't just play rook takes a4, and then I could be strategically lost it because that a pawn. White hasn't got any weaknesses, but I've got this a pawn which he could tie my pieces down to it and then just quickly turn to kingside and hack me up. And the reason I did it is because I thought he wouldn't want to like risk the discoveries, because all players like simple positions. But the all discoveries lose actually. 95 just e takes f5 is winning. So all black's pieces are on pretty. But I played b takes a4. He plays b takes a4. I mean, another bad strategic move. So a decision of that move was to give white the c4 square for nothing and maybe e5 and knight d6. I play rook b4 trying to get some activity, and he plays knight c4, but it seems that he missed a strong continuation in e takes f5, e takes f5, and now in this position this move looks absolutely strategically terrible, but bishop takes c6 is actually really strong, because after knight takes c6 forced, queen g2, and now white His queen is coming to d5 with check, and there's an open e-file. Say rook e8, check, knight c4. And this is actually a strong pawn sacrifice, because of course black can take the a4 pawn, because if the rook's taken and the other rook gets taken with check, so he has to play knight. So Bear plays knight d6, and this is pretty crushing. This with queen f7 a threat and all sorts of other nasties. So that's strong for white. But he plays knight c4, which keeps a small advantage. And now I play rook e8. I correctly assessed that the b file is pretty irrelevant. Well, having two rooks in b file is pretty irrelevant. And move it to the e file. Because of course the e file could get opened up at any point, so I'd rather have a rook than x-raying white's queen. Rook a b8 and a knight f3 just gives white an advantage. And now another thing, because my opponent was quite a risk-free player, like he didn't want to take on a4 because of potential discoveries, but he also doesn't seem to like his queen lined up with a rook, even though there isn't really any threats against it yet. Like he plays queen d2, which is the start of a bad plan. I play a5, solidifying, like cementing my rook on b4. And now again, this move e takes f5 is strong. The best continuation this time is to take with a knight. Oh, for God's sake. Why do I keep doing that? Take with knight. Knight takes f5, e takes f5, and then take everything off and then check with the bishop. And after queen e2, again out of nowhere, white seems to have gained the strong initiative. Like there's already a threat against the bishop, and this knight can come to e5, rook can come to e1, and black's king's really wide open. So that's strong. He plays c3, which is a very bad move, just weakening the d3 pawn and giving black some activity in the d4 square. I play rook b3, but the stronger was d takes c3, queen takes c3, f takes c4, d takes c4, and knight d4 with a very active position. Strong knight outpost, pressure against a4, and a safer king than in the game. Gives black the advantage. But yeah, so I play rook b3. And now he plays c takes d4, and again I play a dodgy second rate move with, I should have maybe played knight takes d4. Say knight f3, f takes e4, and now the move knight takes d4 seems best for white, allowing rook takes d3, queen takes a5, queen's come off. Now bishop takes e4, attacking the rook, rook c3. Rook a d1, and now we swap these pawns off, and this gives white a slightly better endgame because the e6 pawn is weak. But I think black could probably just about hold it because it's on the same colour as his bishop. So it's slightly better for white, but a draw is probably the most likely result. Another option was knight b4, hitting d3 twice, say bishop f1, so white's bishop's forced off that dangerous diagonal. Then we're taking d4. And then knight f3, queen a7, defending the pawn, but it's quite a passive square for the king. Sorry, queen. So that is isn't too great. Anyway, 2 secs. Right, so he plays rook ec1. Another option again was to take an f5, and then the engine's actually given that white can just win a pawn here. With bishop takes c6, bishop takes c6, queen takes a5. So white actually could have won a pawn by force, which, and it doesn't seem to give black enough for it, but a lot of people wouldn't like to part with the g2 bishop for a knight, so that's probably why he rejected it. So rook ec1, rook eb8, and now plays e5, a very strategically dubious move. The best option was to take an f5. After e takes f5, knight f3, knight b4, knight ce5, queen d6, knight g5, now bishop e8 covering f7 with a sharp position. We're very interesting in position as well, with white's two aesthetically pleasing looking knights, and black's knight is also very strong. White's bishop though looks a lot stronger, but black's rooks are a lot better, so it's probably very equal. But he plays e5. which clamps down on d6 and prefers to bring a knight there, but it weakens d5 drastically, and if a black knight can get to d5 safely, then he can come into e3, which is very strong. And in fact, I could have just simply played knight b4, knight moves with discovery to d6, now queen a7, protecting d4 and planning knight d5 to e3, and then also nasty pressure on d3. And this is actually much better for black over a pawn according to engine. I didn't play it. I thought the immediate knight d5 is good because I thought that him giving up his light squared bishop would be bad, but I completely misevaluated the position, although it's still quite equal. After bishop takes d5, e takes d5. I thought the double pawns will be strong, controlling a lot of key squares and giving me space, but they're actually quite weak, especially d4, and that my bishop's bad compared to his knight. So knight d6, queen b6, trebling on the b file because I like trebling. Now he brings his knight back into the game, but queen a2 seems quite strong, which prevents my rook doing anything because then queen takes d5 check is going to be very strong. So I can play bishop e6, now queen back to e2. So the point of that manoeuvre is to force my bishop to an inferior square. Knight f3, bring knight back into the game and anticipate knight b4 because now we can answer it with knight e1. And now I play a bad move, queen a6, because I'm basically just trying to win d3, which is weak. But the problem is it leaves the c7 square on pre. I should have just blocked the c file, and then say if he does that, then play queen c5 with a slightly better position. So that was I was stupid. Now he plays rook c7, which is the move 30 time control, and he only had 51 seconds left. I had nearly 6 minutes for my last move, but I actually let my clock run all the way down to 17 seconds because I realised I was in trouble. Because another major defect of when I played knight d5 allowing that swap is that white gets protected past e pawn, and this is actually starting to become a real threat I realised at this point, so I spent all the rest of my time working that stuff out. And I realised that my bishop hasn't really got any good squares, and now his rook's on the 7th and he can play it, pushes e pawn. I need to break through on queenside faster, I'm toast. Because also when his e pawn advances, he can go queen e2 to e5 with mating threats. So bishop e6 by the way loses to rook e7. And the other option was rook d8, but it's really passive and he can just sacrifice the a4 pawn. Because now he has queen f2. I can't hold d4, so say bishop d7 is actually giving us the only move, and then queen takes d4 is crushing for white. So I play bishop e8, and I get lucky here to be honest that he plays a horrible move knight takes e8, which gets rid of a strong knight from my bad bishop. The only really good thing it does is clear, gets rid of a key defender of the e6 pawn, e5 pawn even. But rook e7, queen c6, rook c1, rook c3, and now rook b1 is very good for white because now I've got a strong knight attacking my passive bishop, and it's just really awful. So I play knight takes e8, rook takes e8, and rook ac1. Just doubling up on the c file and time my pieces down because I don't want the rook coming to c8. It also prepares maybe a double on 7th with rook d7 and rook c7. And now I play a horrible move, rook a3, because by this point the match was 2-all and I really wanted to win, so I was looking for ways to win. So I decided I'll try and win the a4 pawn and then hang on desperately against the onslaught and win the endgame pawn up. Now I rejected knight takes d3 because I thought that it lost to a rook 1 to c6. However, there's some interesting tactics now where I can go knight takes e1, because if he takes my queen I win the queen back with a fork, and if he actually does take my queen, it actually leads to a forced draw because even after checking and taking the queen he has rook a7, and although I'm a knight in the pawn up I can't stop a perpetual on the 7th rank. However, after playing knight takes e1 I've got rook b6, after rook takes b6, queen takes b6, he moves his rook, and then knight takes e1, queen takes e1 and queen c6, and black's going to be 2 pawns up and winning. So actually rook c6 is actually a blunder, but he can just play knight takes d3, queen takes d3, queen takes d3, rook takes d3 and rook 1 c5 and winning the pawn back with an interesting endgame ahead. queen b6 is also a good alternative to play. I play rook a3, and now he could have actually won with queen b2, attacking the rook and the d4 pawn, and I'm forced to actually bin it because if I take the a4 pawn after queen takes d4, the evaluation, strangely enough, is given us over plus 12, because if say I play a normal move like rook b8, then e6 is actually a forced mate because it's going to mate on g7 and there's like nothing I can do. If I try and block the pawn with queen e6, then queen a7 is toast. And if I try and block it with the rook, then he has check, check, and then he makes an h7. So then I'm busted then. So after queen b2 I have to say play sack exchange or something. And there's not really enough compensation here, to be honest. I can only really try and hang on. So queen b2 was a very strong resource, but he plays rook d7, trying to treble on c7. I play rook c8 to stop that plan. Now he goes e6. And this is starting to get really critical now. He had an interesting tactical option in rook a7. If I just try and ignore the rook and protect my rook, he takes the a5 pawn for nothing, which also stabilises my b4 knight. It's very important, that a5 pawn. So I have to play queen takes a7, and now he takes my rook with check. King g7, e6. But now the move queen e7 keeps mutual chances, blockading the pawn. But it's not ideal because I don't really want my queen protecting a meager pawn. So e6, and of course the pawn's immune because my c8 rook's going to hang. And now I should have played rook a2. He takes my rook off, and now his only move is queen d1. And now I play queen e8, and again chances are about equal, given us dead equal by Houdini. But I didn't like the look at that position and play for win with rook ac3, which is a blunder, and I actually saw the continuation that seems to win for him. First of all, e7 now can be answered by king f7, black just about hangs on. But the main continuation is to take the rook, and then if I play rook takes c3, then check, and e7 in, white's getting the second queen by force. So d takes c3, attacking the queen. Now he moves his queen to the wrong square with queen e2, which allows him an important check on this diagonal. He should have gone queen e3, which also threatens queen e5 to g7 mate. The only defence is knight c6, which I looked at, and after e7, rook e8, I'd only calculated this far and I didn't think it was that bad, and I thought I'd have some counterplay with my c3 pawn and chances of winning us the match, but queen c5, which I didn't see, defends his pawn and attacks two of my pawns, so I'd be in big trouble and probably losing. So he plays queen e2 and I play check. And after king h1, I brought the knight back to c6. Another alternative was queen d4, and this leads to some interesting tactics that ends up in a draw. He plays e7, I block it with the rook. He plays rook d8, I have to play king f7, and after knight f3, the key move to save the game is the move c2, taking advantage of this pawn. He can't try queen takes c2 because knight takes c2 protects my knight, so I'd be a piece up, so he has to take my queen. I queen, moves his king, taking e7, and now it looks like black's winning all of a sudden, but white has the resource rook d7. I'd have to take it, comes in with check, winning the rook, and now again it looks like black's going to win because he can fork the king and the knight. But white gets a perpetual, and he has to take the knight as well, otherwise he's going to get mated by queen and knight. But now it's a perpetual. So that was a very interesting Houdini line I found there. And I hope you enjoyed looking at it. So after knight c6, e7, clearing the e6 square for a check, which isn't quite as deadly as it looks actually. Because after rook e8, the only move, queen e6 check. And now king h8 loses to queen f7, and now it's lost because I have to protect the rook with queen b8, and then queen f6 check spares the c6 knight in the game. I play king g7, and now both sides have down to less than 4 minutes each, and my opponent actually moves the wrong piece to the right square. He should have played rook d6, and now this looks like it wins a piece in the game, but black has the counter resource, which was made possible by queen b6 check, and one of the reasons why queen e2 was a bad move, with queen f2, which out of nowhere threatens a mate on f1. and in fact nothing could be done to protect it without significant concessions, so white has to take a perpetual, etc. However, both sides are down to little time, and he plays queen d6, going after my d5 pawn, but now the move queen f2, which I played very quickly, is actually winning now because it threatens a mate, but now his queen's not protecting his knight, and there's also not a single safe check for white. And he lets his clock run down all the way down to 1 second, tosses his knight away with check, which is the only option. Somehow plays king g1 just without losing on time, and now plays c2 and his flag drops immediately. His electronic flag. But of course I'm getting a second queen, so it's lost anyway. It's a shame that Askeldam's a win on time, but he should have resigned that anyway. But anyway, what a game that was, and it won us the match as well. But I came back from the dead there a few times, bit of a swindle with queen f2. But I hope you enjoyed this instructive game, and please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.